Music is more omnipresent than ever. People consume music without borders and interact with artists across so many different channels. Everything is changing, and we are dealing with more data than ever in music history. Chartmetric is here to simplify the digital music landscape. We bring you the latest data from dozens of platforms and connect it, so you can focus on spotting trends and gathering insights. Track your audience across the entire digital spectrum from one simple-to-use dashboard and unlock powerful analytics to amplify your reach. Explore all this and more at chartmetric.com.
Well, hi everyone, and welcome to the latest installment of Off the Charts, our monthly webinar series, brought to you by the team here at Chartmetric. My name is Mike Warner. I'm the Director of Artist Label and DSP Relations here at Chartmetric. I'm actually going to be stepping aside today and handing it over to Jason, Rutger, and Sarah, who all work in the Insights team, and they're going to be diving deep into our latest 6MO report. So that being said, let me bring everyone up on the screen here. Welcome, Jason, Rutger, and Sarah.
Hey, Mike.
I think Jason and Rutger, you've been on the webinar before, but Sarah, this might be your first time.
Yep, first timer.
Awesome. And so for everyone that's just sort of, hasn't had the opportunity to meet you before, where are you all from? And we'll start with Sarah first. Where are you based?
Yeah, well, I'm from Ohio. I just moved to New York City. I live in Queens. So yeah.
Awesome. And we'll jump to Rutger next, and then Jason.
I am also in New York City. I'm in Brooklyn, and I'm originally from San Diego, where Mike is right now.
And hey everyone, I'm Jason, based in Queens, New York City, and originally from Chicago land area, Midwest. Moving it down. I did not just say that.
You did. This is live. We can't take that out. I'm sorry. Hey, be proud of where you're from. It's good. And also for everyone that's here, that's watching us, if you're in the live right now, let us know in the comments where you're from. We always love to hear from you. We get people tuning in from all around the world, all times of the day and night, and we appreciate you being here. Like I said, I am going to dip out right now. I'm going to be hanging around in the green room, as we call it, and I'm going to leave it up to all of you.
Cool. Thanks, Mike. Hey, everyone. And just to say, Mike is the GOAT. Tyler, we totally agree with you. We're super excited today to talk to you about this report, the 6MO industry report that we do every 6 months, just trying to look at kind of the future of the industry by looking a little bit into the past. So that's kind of like what we're here for today. It's something we do roughly every January and roughly every July. And we're super excited. It's a bunch of work, but it's really neat to look at the things that have happened in our industry on different platforms. Sometimes things make sense, sometimes things are very surprising, but it's always really cool to kind of look back and see who and what we should be looking forward to in the very near future. So that's the purpose of the report, and we'll get to the nitty-gritty of it in a second. But one thing to know is that we have past reports too. So if you ever need to do any kind of analysis on kind of previous reports, I think our first one was back in 2018. So we've been doing it for that long. This is our 7th report here. And yeah, we're super excited. So Rocker, I'll let you take it over from there.
Cool. So yeah, for this particular report, we looked at January 1st through June 30th of this year, obviously. And for part 1, as we do with every report, we look at the top artists who grew on each platform over the past 6 months. So that's anything from Spotify to TikTok to Instagram to Wikipedia. We look at, on certain metrics on those platforms, what artists grew the most, and then we rank them 1 to 10. And then we give you a little bit of a breakdown of interesting stories from these top 10 lists. And then for part 2, we typically do a sort of deep dive on a particular topic. So for this report, we wanted to look at catalog and TikTok. There's been a lot of news stories about how old music is blowing up right now, and thanks in large part to TikTok. So we wanted to examine that. Like, is this actually happening? If it is, what does old music mean? And we wanted to look at it through the lens because in the music industry, there's a distinction between frontline and catalog. So we wanted to really ask the question, should we still be thinking about music in terms of like frontline was released within the last 18 months, catalog is older than that? Does that still make sense in the Spotify and TikTok era? So we'll dig into that a little later, but first I'll hand it over to Jason to go through the top 10 artists who grew in terms of Chartmetric artist score.
Sweet. Thanks, Rucker. Want to give a shout out to Ghana, Stockholm, Hamburg, Barcelona. This is so cool. Ireland, Nashville, Poland, Queens. What up? Really happy y'all can join us here today. Cool. So let's just get into it. So this is the beginning of part one. This is about Chartmetric artist score. So if you're not familiar with this, well, let me back up even a little bit more. So for those of you who maybe just got forwarded this link to you by maybe a colleague of yours, Chartmetric is a company. We collect data from a bunch of different, music streaming platforms and social media platforms, all having to do with music, revolving around music. So, at this point, we're collecting information from over 20 different platforms. And so it starts to get to be a lot to handle, obviously, for any one person. So the idea with Chartmetric artist scores, it's our way of simplifying the idea of just global popularity. So the idea of, if we took Spotify monthly listeners and we took Apple Music playlists and we took, your Instagram follower count and how much it grew in the past whatever amount of time. We took all these different kind of metrics and boiled it down to like this index, if you will. So you can understand, how your own career is kind of moving just on your own, not relative to other people. That's what the Chartmetric artist rank is for. But just in terms of like your own progress, maybe you just put out an album or are running an Instagram campaign or something that's, helping out your reach and your engagement a lot. The score is going to reflect that. And so that's something you can track within Chartmetric. So one of the things that I think we're doing for the first time here in 6MO is seeing who rose the most in their Chartmetric artist score in the past 6 months. And you'll see 3 tiers here. There's like the legendary, superstar, and mainstream. There's a couple other kind of artist stages, which if you have the link, which we can put in the chat here, you can follow along with us, by the way. That one Chartmetric's career stages, feel free to click on that. It's a separate article that one of our data scientists who was in charge of that particular career stages feature. It's a way of, it's a separate thing from artist score, and it's a way to kind of benchmark artists. So they're, you're not comparing a Beyonce with, a better producer that just started out putting music. Obviously there's kind of like, there's levels to the business, and to be able to kind of create that and allow artists to move in between those tiers, but also be able to kind of compare themselves with artists in similar career stages is kind of the whole point of it. So that's how we kind of broke down this particular section. And as you can see in the legendary section, and this for this particular section, it's kind of like artists who at least have releases more than 30 years old. So number 1 was Kenny Loggins. For any of you movie fans out there who saw Top Gun Maverick, that came out not too long ago, and of course, his track Highway, Danger Zone, I think is just the name of it. But I always think about the hook. I'm not going to sing it, copyright issues. But it's a great song, and the filmmakers left it untouched. They played it in the beginning of the film, and it was a pretty. I think it's still playing in some theaters, and it's been running for a long time. So the movie has done well, and obviously the song itself has kind of experienced this resurgence, which is something that we see a lot. Obviously, not with just movies out in the theaters, but also movies in Netflix and Hulu and TV shows and so on and so forth. So he kind of like went out. Cheyenne, for those not familiar, the Latin heartthrob from Puerto Rico, tried out for Menudo, but he was too young. Went on to sell like millions of albums. He debuted himself on TikTok in April. So that's kind of like why we see him number 2, because he blew up on TikTok. I'm sure there were a lot of folks that were really happy to see him again. And then number 3 was The Clash. For those who are into British punk rock, the seminal band did a re-release in May. So that's why we see them over in the legendary column at number 3. Superstar column, we see a rapper from India, Sidhu Moosewala. I'm probably mispronouncing the name, but he was unfortunately murdered. He was murdered in, I think this was in May of 2022. And so his music kind of had a resurgence as well. For those not familiar with his work, I was not, but he's huge. His fan base is huge and global. His YouTube channel, for example, has 4 billion YouTube views alone. And so he posthumously took number 1 here. Number 2 was Joji, the American artist, when he put out Glimpse of Us on May. That also blew up. And number 3 was Chencho Corleone, also from Puerto Rico. He's also blowing up as well. And last but not least, in the mainstream column is Kate Bush. I think probably most everyone has read articles about Kate Bush and Stranger Things. It looks like we're looking at her Chartmetric score. For those of you not familiar, season 4 on Netflix for Stranger Things came out. There was an episode in the first half of that season where her song played a very big role. And you can see that kind of like glow up there, so to speak, for Kate Bush, who, if you're not familiar with her, she was like an 80s Brit alt pop star. And has been riding that wave ever since. And it's it's a great song too. Obviously subjective, but it's kind of enjoying its own tale. It's not just kind of going away, even though that episode just came out a few weeks ago in May. I'm sorry, a few months ago in May. And number 2 and number 3 is Pailita, who was a Chilean artist, active for a couple of years, and Nikki, you're the U.S. artist who put out Sunroof in December 2021, 192 million streams on Spotify. So anyway, that's an idea of Chartmetric artist score and some of the different kind of tiers of it. So for those interested, please check it out. Please read more about the article. But that will be it for me for now.
Cool. Thanks, Jason. So YouTube. So for the breakthrough artists to watch on YouTube this year, we looked at channel views. So the total channel views that an artist is getting on their YouTube channel. At number 1 was a French electro rock duo named Supermassive, fittingly enough, and they went from like 1.2 million views to like 600 million views or something. So a pretty huge blow up for them. And I think part of that is because they're pretty active on YouTube Shorts, and YouTube Shorts are now counted as part of an artist channel views. So I think that's been really effective for them. And I think another thing to note for this particular list is that half of this list blew up thanks to TikTok. So typically we see tracks blowing up on TikTok, but it seems like artists are increasingly able to leverage TikTok to actually help their artist brand get bigger now. And I think we'll see that more and more as artists get better at marketing themselves on TikTok like they do on other platforms like Instagram. Now I'll hand it over to Sarah to talk about Wikipedia.
Yeah, thanks, Rucker. So for Wikipedia, we looked at like Wikipedia artist page views, and kind of due to maybe the informational nature of Wikipedia, unfortunately, death was kind of like what grabbed people's attentions to go to these artist pages. 7 of the top 10 artists for 2022 actually like passed away either due to old age or unclear circumstances, or kind of as Jason was explaining in the case of Indian rapper Sidhu Moosewala, it was due to assassination. But on a brighter note, television was, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I definitely agree there. Television was actually also a great attention grabber for the public. 2019's breakout star Alexa Demi shot to fame thanks to season 2 of Euphoria. And wrestler musician Elias actually had a controversial return to WWE TV, playing a new character as his younger brother, Ezekiel, which spurred major attention from the public. So, yeah, that's it for Wikipedia, and I will turn it back over to.
Jason, sorry to jump in. You're on mute, mate. You've been on mute for about 30 seconds.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me okay now?
You had me come back in. I said I'd leave you alone the entire webinar and I was going to dip out, but I just had to let you know you were on mute.
Thank you, sir.
I'll make
why you're still here. Sorry, guys. This is take two. That's great. Anyway, I wanted to restart it anyway. So in 2022 January, Twitter kind of returned to the Nigerian market. It was banned for 7 months there, so it was kind of neat to see artists kind of bubble up during the first half of this year. Supposedly because it was a great growth period for a lot of people, because a lot of folks who were fans of those artists could kind of come back and enjoy their content online. So 3 of the 10 artists are Nigerian here, including number 1, Yemi Alade. We also see a couple other kind of international trends happening on Twitter, which we've seen in past 6ML reports as well. One is just the growth of Latin artists. Number 2 is Karol G, the huge star. We also see a lot of K-pop artists constantly trending on this particular platform. And it's kind of similar to things that we see on Facebook as well. These tools that have been around kind of like the most in terms of kind of music artists promoting themselves on social media seem to have now gone to international markets as kind of like a really big growth area, whereas for a lot of American artists, it doesn't seem to be that as much. At least that's what we see in the data. And you see that here in the top 10. There's actually no US artists, I think, in the top 10 here, if I'm not mistaken. I think the first name, kind of like household name that you would see that's US based is Doja Cat. And she was like 19th down on this particular list. Other ones that were between 10 and 19 are Raul Alejandro, the Puerto Rican singer, Adekunle Gold, the Nigerian singer-songwriter, and Bizarrap, the huge Argentinian record producer. They were all like just outside the top 10, including the top 10 that you see here. So in terms of kind of an international artist promotion tool, we see that a lot on Twitter, which is neat to see. Sarah, you want to talk about Spotify for a little bit?
Yeah, thanks, Jason. So for Spotify, we looked at Spotify monthly listening growth to kind of determine this list. And if there's one thing that most of these artists have in common, it's that the track originally blew up on TikTok. So both our number 2 spot, Nikki Yor, and number 4 spot, Daisy, they gained 13 million monthly listeners thanks to the viral success of their collaboration track, Sunroof, blew up on TikTok. For Latin music, Pailita and Polima West Coast were spots number 5 and 7. They also gained around 14 million monthly listeners from their breakthrough collab track Ultra Solo, which has been featured in 2.8 million TikTok videos since its release. And who could forget our frontrunner, Kate Bush, who's made a name for herself, well, already had a name for herself, but just broke through again. Thanks to her song that exploded on Stranger Things, like Jason mentioned earlier. The track really gained more resonance through TikTok, and it currently sits at a gain of 40.6 million monthly listeners for this half of the year, making Kate Bush the most successful Spotify monthly riser. And kind of the takeaway just from this list is that the power of TikTok and its ability to really drive users straight to those streaming platforms and engage directly with the music. So yeah, that's all for Spotify, and back to Rutger for Instagram.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. All right. So on Instagram, we just looked at follower growth. So these are the artists that got the most Instagram followers during this 6-month time period. Interestingly, we typically think of YouTube as like the most international platform. And in this case, Instagram really took the crown. I think 9 of these artists come from outside the United States. So we have a trans Brazilian TV personality at number 1. We have a Congolese legend at number 5, and we have a Ukrainian rap group at number 7, who actually won the Eurovision Song Contest. And it's really only Dominic Fike, number 9, who's representing America. So that's cool to see that Instagram is growing worldwide, and especially the artists who are able to market themselves on this platform is getting more and more international. So that's really cool. All right, next we're going to talk about Shazam. So I'll hand it back to Sarah to talk about that.
Yeah, so for Shazam, we just looked at, Shazam counts for the track. And in 2022, the correlation between TikTok and Shazam is just growing stronger than ever. 8 out of the top 10 tracks were boosted thanks to, the TikTok challenges or the dances and just general popularity from users. And kind of similarly to Instagram, the kind of global nature of Shazam like really showed through this season. Songs like R&B stylers like Whoa Whoa and Katy Perry and Alesa's like When I'm Gone trended on a global level. And we also have tracks that kind of trended specifically in countries like South Africa, Mexico, and Poland. The number 1 track, Pasoda, it found its revival in Hungary this summer. And then the 1987 track, Drink Before the War, it got its second win thanks to a sync from season 2, episode 4 of HBO's Euphoria. All right. And then, back to Jason.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah. So this one on TikTok. So TikTok obviously is, the birthplace of a lot of viral tracks. These 10 are ones that we saw increase in TikTok, like the number of TikTok posts that were gained in the first half of this year. So if you don't see one, we have to, set some thresholds because we're kind of like calculating growth percentages, and it gets a little tricky when it goes from like 0 posts to like a couple million or something like that. But these are the 10 that we came up with. The number one, everyone probably has heard this one before. So it's Don Toliver's No Idea, which originally got huge on TikTok back in 2019 when it got released, and it was part of that slowed in reverb kind of vibe. When folks would take a regular song, but then slow it down, add some reverb to make it look more atmospheric and kind of vibey. It saw 4.2 million TikTok posts the first time it came around and was viral on the platform. This time, it was actually a choreographer named JB, I think, who puts up a lot of really cool like dancing TikTok posts. Used No Idea again, this time at normal speed, and got 1.8 million uploads in the first half of this year. So that was the number 1. Number 2 was from the Middle East. There's an Egyptian actor who's starring in a new film. His name's Karim Mahmoud Abdelaziz. That took the number 2 spot. And another one I think worth mentioning was Mason Ramsey. I thought this was absolutely adorable. So for those not familiar, he's the country star who first got viral singing in a Walmart back in 2018, went on Ellen and kind of did this whole thing. And then just kind of like stepped away from the spotlight. And then recently, in the first half of this year, Mason Ramsey's 2019 track, Before I Knew It, started to go viral when people started using it again. And it turns out he was super happy putting up TikTok posts of him working in a Subway in his hometown and teaching people how to make sandwiches and just looking super happy. So that I thought was a really refreshing story. But that in a nutshell is kind of a few tracks that got big earlier this year on TikTok. Rucker, want to talk about Pandora for a bit?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jason. So at Pandora, we also looked at the track level. So tracks that got the most streams in the past 6 months, or that grew the most. So because Pandora is a US-based platform and it's pretty landlocked to the US, and country music is pretty big in America, this is really the only platform where we see a good share of the music being country music. So we have Nashville's Old Dominion at number 1 with their track No Hard Feelings. And this track really blew up on Pandora thanks to Shazam and radio. So probably being played on the radio and then people Shazamming it and that translating to Pandora streams. And then the number 3 track as well was a pop country track called Wishful Drinking by Ingrid Andress and Sam Hunt. And this track seemed to have a similar trajectory to No Hard Feelings. So that seems to be a pathway for this US-based platform is like radio and Shazam still. So next, we're going to move on to part 2, which is like the meat and potatoes of this report. So for, like I mentioned at the start, for this report, we looked at redefining catalog. So again, just like as a refresher, Frontline traditionally has been defined as any track that was released in the last 18 months, and catalog was music that's older than that. So again, catalog can include anything from, you know, a real recent artist like, I don't know, Taylor Swift or something, and then an older artist like Harry Belafonte. So those tracks from those artists can be considered catalog. And what this means is that it determines how marketing budgets are allocated. So Frontline gets the most resources. That's what's getting marketed the most. Catalog traditionally has been pushed aside. But again, we've been seeing a lot of, and I'm sure you guys have seen as well, a lot of news articles about how catalog is blowing up, how old music is going viral on TikTok. There's a lot of news stories about it, from, you know, Fleetwood Mac to Kate Bush, and those case studies are totally valid. But we wanted to look at, like, are these is this the new rule now? Like, is old music actually en masse getting bigger, or is it a little more nuanced than that? So to start, we wanted to see, like, where is listening attention really going? So we know that TikTok is largely considered the driver of this catalog growth. So we looked at TikTok and we looked at the release dates of TikTok tracks that got at least, you know, 10,000 TikTok posts. And this is a graph of what we found. So you can see, like, the tracks that are actually getting traction on TikTok or have gotten traction. You know, the vast majority were released in 2020. Like, there's a very clear spike there. And before that, you know, there's a good growth curve about, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so that it really starts exploding about 5 years or so. So what this tells us is that the bulk of tracks that got significant traction on TikTok were released, generally speaking, in the last 5 years. And this aligns with a report by Luminate that said that tracks released between like 2017 and 2019 saw the biggest growth in terms of music that is considered catalog. And again, that's just older than 18 months. But you can clearly see that in 2020, something happened. So if we zoom in a little bit, again, we can see, like, really after the 2010s that it's this catalog music that is blowing up. It's not the Kate Bushes and the Fleetwood Mac. Those are nice stories, but they're really one-offs. They're not a trend. What is the trend is, you know, these more recent tracks, still older than 18 months, but more recent than you think based on the news stories that are coming out. So Another insight we gathered from this is that there was a peak in the diversity of tracks released in 2020 that generated TikTok activity. But you can see after 2020, that starts to dip again and go back to like pre-2020 levels. So this tells us that 2020, whether because of the pandemic, because independent music creators were just like, adopting TikTok to promote tracks, and also because India was still available. TikTok was still available in India for the first half of 2020. So that might have had an effect as well in terms of the diversity of tracks that were getting a lot of traction during that year. As you might know, TikTok is now banned in India, so that might be a factor as well. But clearly, there's been this winnowing that is happening after 2020 in terms of the amount of tracks that are getting TikTok traction. So another factor is that like big music companies caught on to the power of TikTok, and so they're consolidating market power of their priority tracks. Cool. So those were some catalog insights from our research. Now let's get into some of our attention insights. So we sort of made this distinction in this report between a time-based system, which is like the frontline and catalog way of looking at things, and an attention-based system, which is more like what tracks are getting traction on certain platforms like TikTok, like Shazam. And using that method to determine where to allocate marketing resources rather than just this track was released within this time period. So to do that, we looked at what the connection might be between tracks that got traction on TikTok and on Shazam and the Spotify and YouTube charts. So we can see on the Spotify charts that the charts are mostly dominated by the same tracks year over year. So from 2020 to 2022, you can see that like it's only like around 10% of tracks that are new each year, and around 90% of tracks just stay on the Spotify charts. For YouTube, it's a similar story. Maybe a little bit more diverse, which would make sense based on its international and more diverse nature, but still, 85 to 89% of the tracks that hit the YouTube charts stay on the YouTube charts. So that doesn't leave a lot of real estate for new tracks to make it big on those platforms. So from there, we looked at this connection between Shazam and the charts and TikTok and the charts. So we can see that of the tracks that charted on Spotify, for instance, 63% of those tracks in 2020 had significant Shazam traction. The share of those tracks has decreased since 2020 slightly. It's still half. So it's still a big number of the tracks have significant Shazam traction, but there's definitely been a decreasing trend over the past 3 years. For TikTok, it's the opposite. And this aligns with what we were talking about in terms of like TikTok blowing up during the pandemic. So in 2020, only 17% of the tracks that were on the Spotify charts had significant TikTok traction. By 2021, it was 41%. And then by this year, it's almost 50%. So it's reaching near Shazam levels. So as Shazam sort of decreases, TikTok is increasing. So what this means is that so Shazam activity is actually the most highly correlated with the Spotify and YouTube charts. However, that's been decreasing. Spotify is also highly correlated, and that is increasing. Um, let's see. So yeah, either pandemic lockdowns means that people were like Shazamming from their, favorite Netflix shows, or Shazam became a little less relevant over time as a music discovery source as TikTok relevance increased. And we also looked at the YouTube charts, same concept. And again, we see around 50% correlation between Shazam and the YouTube charts, with the decreasing trend. And with TikTok, there was much less correlation, with an increasing trend. And there's a number of reasons that this could be. We didn't have time to investigate them, but this could have a lot to do, with the global nature of TikTok, and again the fact that, of YouTube, and again the fact that TikTok is not available in India anymore, and YouTube is the biggest streaming platform for India. All right, I know there's a lot. We'll have time for Q&A after, but for now I'm gonna pass it off to Jason to wrap up part 2 of this report.
Thanks, Rucker. I think that's a really good explanation. The final wormhole we're going to try to go down here is kind of like the conclusion of it all, where we try to compare the mentality of catalog and frontline, traditionally, versus kind of like a more market-driven, externally focused mentality, which would be, in this case, TikTok attention, but who knows what platform it's going to be, next year or 2 or 3 years from now. So you'll see 2 graphs here. This one is focusing on, it's actually the same chart as the second chart Rucker showed you initially here, which is essentially kind of the TikTok tracks that we had in our database that had more than 10,000 TikTok posts total cumulative. And we kind of charted on the x-axis their release date of the tracks themselves. And so if you can remember, it kind of went up until 2020, and then it started to drop down. We're just looking at that kind of like drop down tail from 2020 up until kind of like today. And you see that drop from about, I think it was a little bit over 11,000 in 2020, all the way down to, I think, it was like 4.2, projected to 4.2K. Obviously, we're still in the middle of 2022, but about 4.2K over the course of time to now. So that first chart is supposed to kind of embody the mentality of like, okay, if we think of tracks that are getting attention according to the release date, that's kind of like the downtrend that you see. The second chart that you see here is essentially the same group of tracks. So tracks also with more than 10,000 cumulative TikTok posts. But instead of the release date, we organize it on the x-axis according to the first time they got Spotify popularity. In this case, if you want to get technical, we did it over 80 or more of the Spotify popularity index, which is essentially Spotify's own popularity metric, which they give to tracks, also to artists as well. And so the idea here is to embody in a chart the idea of kind of like a market-driven, attention-focused mentality. And so we see pretty much along the same time from about 2020 till today, it's more of a jagged trend. It's not as sure, but like the trend line is like moving up, albeit for a less amount of tracks if you look on the y-axis. So the idea here is it's not to say that at the beginning of that second chart's timeline, which was July 2020, that there weren't a lot of tracks that were on Spotify and getting attention. They just weren't at the level of big popularity, in this case over 80. It goes up to 100 for those who aren't familiar with that index. So 80 to 100, which is kind of like how we're defining popularity on Spotify in this case. It just wasn't as concentrated as it is now. So even though you see the number of tracks slowly increasing up as we kind of like arrive to today, the idea that we're trying to communicate is that there were kind of a lot of tracks in 2020 that were on that kind of TikTok Spotify connection, which I think we're all pretty familiar with at this point. Just that kind of attention was kind of distributed among a more diverse pool of tracks. Whereas today, even though we're seeing an uptick in the number of tracks that are getting even bigger popularity, we kind of view that as kind of like the market forces of influencer deals and labels doing deals with the influencers so they can focus that kind of huge amount of attention on a less number of tracks. So that's the idea that we're trying to communicate with the second chart here. And we're trying to show those two mentalities kind of crossing paths, if you will, but going in opposite directions. So that's kind of like our way of wrapping up this whole article in terms of, this internally focused catalog versus frontline driven mentality versus kind of like an externally focused, in this case TikTok, but who knows what platform that's going to be, in the future, mentality. So obviously, I feel like we're in a good position, or any other kind of analytics minded person, to use that kind of ladder mentality to understand where to place attention on the copyrights that you happen to control or own. And that's kind of how we conclude it in this last section here. We make this comparison to, back in 2005 when YouTube started. It was a lot of, innocent vloggers just talking about their day. And eventually, as the years gone by, it's now about, watch time and monetization methods for content creators. And we're starting to see kind of like that change from kind of innocent dance memes on TikTok to kind of like, the business of content creation and music and, so many other verticals taking, hold of TikTok. And so that's kind of what we see here in the data, even though we originally, viewed it as a way to view and try to redefine what catalog and frontline might be these days. So I think that's it. Rucker or Sarah, unless you think I left anything out in that wrap up. But that's kind of like our part two. I'm super happy. Big shout out to Music Business Worldwide and Music Ally for checking out the report and talking about it a little bit. We very much appreciate it. And thanks to you guys for showing up today. We'll just open up to Q&A for now. Let me bring up Sarah and Rucker. If anyone has any questions for us, feel free to ask it right now in the chat. I think there was one. I think it's from Demetrius. So Demetrius asked, have y'all seen YouTube Shorts break any records yet? Can we start tracking data of YouTube Shorts on Chartmetric? Rucker, I feel like did you come across this when you were looking at the YouTube stuff in part one?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this when I was talking about the top 10 gainers in YouTube channel views, but the group Supermassive, like a French electro rock duo, YouTube Shorts, so they were number one, and YouTube Shorts played a huge role in that. It really like exploded, and that's because YouTube Shorts are counted as part of an artist's YouTube channel views. So it really helped them blow up to number one in that case.
I think also generally speaking, YouTube Shorts, I think they contribute to a channel view, if I'm not mistaken. They contribute to that particular artist's channel, but obviously have their own kind of like video accounts as well. Cool. Question from Sunny. If it's not top secret, what is Chartmetric hoping to start tracking in the future? I'll take a stab at it. I think a lot of international streaming platforms are kind of on the horizon. Not at liberty to share all of them right now, but some of the biggest ones that we see outside the US are something that we're working with right now and really excited to share. I think we've always tried to position ourselves as a global company, kind of looking at the international music business. And to do that, we need to be able to cover more than just the big ones that let's say us in the States concentrate on every day. There's so many big streaming platforms and social media platforms in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa that also need to be represented too to really represent that worldview. So I'll share that much. I don't know if either of you have anything else.
No, I think that was the perfect answer. I think another thing we're going to start doing is just making more and more of our own features, whether it's a feature like Chartmetric Artist Score, or we just released like a compare tracks feature. I think with the data we do have, we're going to start distilling it in different ways to make it even more and more intuitive and more useful to get answers from it. So I think we're going to tackle it from both angles.
All right, Angel Navas, what's your view on why a user level Shazam is that relevant to TikTok use or engagement? I thought Shazam was more relevant when a song was on radio or TV, but I never thought TikTok.
Yeah, this is an interesting question. So typically what we see is that a track will go viral on TikTok. Now, a track going viral on TikTok does not necessarily mean it's going to have off-platform success. What does, and what I mean off-platform success, I mean like streaming consumption success, so Spotify. But what is a good indication that it will is actually an increase in Shazam counts. Now, in terms of your question of like, do people not know how to use TikTok? Maybe that's one of the answers. But I think another answer is like, maybe it's an original sound. Maybe it's like friends like playing a TikTok for each other, and then another friend's like, what's that track? I'm just going to Shazam it. It could be a combination of those things, but all that to say, we have noticed a strong correlation between TikTok, Shazam, and Spotify. So that tends to be the viral pipeline today. Is blows up on TikTok, then blows up on Shazam, and then it gets streaming growth. So I would definitely look out for that pipeline.
Mike, did you have anything? I know Mike's in the back of the studio. Mike's good. Okay. All right, cool. Thanks for the question, Anel. And some money. What's your advice for upcoming artists to get most streams and popularity? It's a big question.
That's definitely a Mike question.
Oh,
I feel like...
no. I think somebody's calling you out, Mike. Mike, you want to come out? All right. He's getting ready.
All right. I would say buy Mike's book. That's what I would say.
No, I'm not looking for a shameless plug, although it is strategically placed in the background there. But no, I mean, look, I'm not trying to sell anyone anything. It's such a general question. I mean, we could talk to it for hours, but upcoming artists, I mean, first and foremost, if your music isn't out, put it out. Don't hold back. Don't sit on releases. After that, telling everyone, not just friends and family, but post it on socials. You spread the word. I think we could do a whole separate webinar on this, maybe in one of the upcoming webinars, where we could talk about artists at an early stage and all of the extra things they can do. I hosted a 4-hour workshop about this last month here in San Diego. So it's like, I don't want to hijack the webinar from all of you after you absolutely nailed it with the 6MO. But in some money, I'll happily send you a link. It's on YouTube, so it's free. I'm not trying to take money from you in some money. But hopefully there's some pointers in there that will help you out as well.
Do you want to take this second one from In Some Money too, Mike?
Oh, gosh. It's case by case. I would say if you're going to sign away some of your masters and your publishing, know why you're doing that. Know what the other person, whether it's a label or a distributor or anyone that is taking a percentage, know what they're providing in return first. Some artists are happy to stay independent and recruit their own team, essentially, and they know exactly what they need from everyone. Other artists would much rather go and sign a deal with a distributor or with a label. So yeah, it really comes down to you and what you're looking for. But I always say it's kind of like Shark Tank. And I'm certainly not referring to record labels as sharks, just to be clear. But if you go on Shark Tank and you have an incredible product, you go, look at this, it's awesome, it's going to change lives, it's so good. The first question they say is, what are your sales? In this case, What are your streams? What's your following like on socials? What have you done so far? What are you projecting? How many songs have you got ready to release? If you don't have any of that and you just have great music, a label is very unlikely to be interested at that point. They need to see something that is at a level that they can sprinkle a little more on top and help it to grow. So, yeah, I would say stay independent and learn as much as you can, so that if the time comes that you are looking to sign on with a label or do a distro deal, that you know exactly what you need from them, so that you can mention that at the time as well. And you have a lot more leverage if you've done a lot of the work yourself in the early stages.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, and I think Demetrius has a good point too. Focus on your music first. Make sure your music is good.
We got another one from Divya. Divya's asking, is catalog music doing better worldwide versus new music in terms of time spent listening? Let's see. I'll start. I mean, the things that Rucker and I talked about in like that second part of the report, those were worldwide stats. We are looking at platforms that are mostly global in terms of their reach. They're not like a Pandora, let's say, who only operates in the US. TikTok, obviously, was banned from India, which is a huge part of the world, just population-wise. But otherwise, Spotify is in a lot of global markets, and YouTube even more so. So in a lot of ways, the things we talked about are already kind of encompassed, I think, in a lot of those stats. But of course, it's not the whole story. There's more platforms than just those platforms, as big as they are. So I think there are a lot of trends that are market specific that I don't necessarily think are represented there. For example, in the South Asian market, I think there's a lot of music that is, highly attached to film that comes out, more so than anything we're used to in the U.S. So I think that's something that's worth thinking about in terms of like the films get released and when, and so on and so forth. Rucker, is there anything else you wanted to kind of add to that?
Yeah, I guess I would just add that I think the big takeaway from this report especially is not so much as catalog music doing better than new music, but what do those definitions actually mean? So I think with our report, we're trying to show that new music, or like frontline music, should actually be extended to like 3 to 5 years, because that's what's actually getting attention. And right now, that's considered old music, or that's considered catalog music under the current definition. So I think first we need better definitions of what catalog music and new music are before we could tackle a question like that. But so this was just part one. Hopefully we can tackle your question in another study.
Cool. And Hans got a follow-up related to SPI, Spotify Popularity Index. Notice that there was a specific way or reason to increase quicker or in a more steady way, because you need playlists for that, but the other way around too, higher the Spotify Popularity Index, better playlists. Trying to break out. I'm trying to unpack that a bit in my head.
I think it's sort of in a roundabout way asking what is included in SPI. And ultimately, I mean, it's like Spotify's secret sauce. No one really knows except for them. But I think it includes, and Mike, maybe you know better than I do, but it includes like stream counts and how recent those streams are, and probably like saves, maybe even more granular, like skip rates or something. It's impossible for us to know exactly what goes into it, but yeah, the more playlists you have, the more streams you have, probably the higher SPI you're gonna get.
Yeah, you pretty much covered all of it there, Rutger. It's an interesting one because it is very mysterious, and We don't know the answer. Spotify have never created an article where they explain exactly how it's calculated either. Just to let you know, if you go to Google and say, what is the Spotify popularity index? The first result is actually from our help center, because so many people have asked us, what is SPI? How is it calculated? I think everyone would love to know the secret sauce to get that up to 100 out of 100. But obviously, whatever it is, we feel that it is a very strong guide on where an artist or a track is at based on that popularity index. And once again, this is just my own assumptions, but I think it is related to the last 30 days and playlist ads, streams, saves, and probably other things that we don't see, such as skip rates as well. But that's just speculation.
Right on. All right. Mike, what do you think? We're kind of coming up on the hour here. I see we've got a couple more questions. Do you think we should try to fit them in? Or?
Yeah, if you want to take a quick look, I was just going to say, certainly not trying to do a shameless plug, but I saw a few people asking about that workshop I posted on YouTube. So I'm just going to post, this is just my link menu. The workshop on YouTube, I uploaded it there. So any artists or anyone that works with artists, it's a few hours long. Feel free to boil some coffee and watch it, but it's just all about the tools that are provided directly from the platforms. So if you find that helpful, feel free to check it out. But that's enough shameless plugs from me. And was there any more questions you wanted to jump into, Jason?
Well, yeah, I just want to address them real quick. Tessel, we see you got 2 online music stations. I think probably the best way is to email those in to us at hi@chartmetric.com. I think that'll be the best way for you to get your stations into the Chartmetric system. And that goes for kind of any other kind of more technical, kind of like data-oriented kind of issues you might have with the app. If you see, an artist or a playlist that you might not see, one, just so you know, you can kind of copy a link to their artist page on Spotify, for example, or the playlist URL, and just paste that into our search bar at the top of the the browser page, and it should populate those things for you. With stations that might require kind of like our help, so please feel free to either use the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of the app on your browser, or feel free to email us, and we can get those in for you. What else? Divya has a question about song durations dropping everywhere. We've seen some articles, but I don't know. We'd have to dip into some crazy analysis to take a look at kind of like song length. But I don't know. I don't have anything to say. It seems like there's a lot of motivation for it. I think kind of like the general consensus from some other analysis that has been done is, for a lot of the platforms, it's like 30 seconds constitutes a stream. So what does it matter if it goes beyond that, or, X amount of minutes or something? So obviously when it comes to getting more of those minimum kind of like counts, whatever those might be, that plays to not only that particular artist's favor, but also the whole ecosystems. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense. But obviously art is art, and it's going to be what it's going to be. I would love to hear another Bohemian Rhapsody that's like, 10 minutes long. It's just as epic. I think it's worth it. It's worth it for the art. Anyone else on that one?
No, I think you covered it.
Martha, what are your thoughts on Spotify Discovery Mode? How do you think that will impact streaming and social media trends in the next 6 months?
Crickets. Mike, do you have anything? Because I probably won't have anything good to say about it.
You know what? I think it's too early to tell. So I guess for anyone that isn't familiar, discovery mode is a mode that you can opt into, most likely through your distributor, where Spotify will put your song into a higher rotation, reaching more people, but you will get a lower pay per stream from those streams. So for some people, it's great because they're trying to grow their numbers, grow their reach, and they're happy to take a smaller pay rate. For other people, they're saying, well, I would rather get paid what I'm going to get paid regardless of how those streams come to me. So it is in early stages. I've sort of enjoyed a few artist friends sharing their findings with me, but I definitely don't feel comfortable talking about it in detail yet, just because it is so new. 6 months from now, we could say, hey, I wish I opted in for that, or we could say otherwise. So Rucker, you're definitely able to share your opinion if you'd like, but for me, I'm going to hold off a bit longer and just watch and see how it goes.
Cool. I'll hold off on my opinion too.
Okay, cool. Well, I think this might be the longest webinar we've done in a while, over an hour.
Guys, thanks for all the questions. Thanks for all the engagement. We really appreciate it. Hopefully it was a good convo.
Yeah. In Some Money has the question, can we rewatch this anywhere? Yes. Wherever you're watching this right now, you can bookmark the page you're on. We go live on, let me make sure I get all the platforms right. We go live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, across all of the Chartmetric channels, at Chartmetric everywhere. The replay stays up, so you can come back and catch the replay as well. We know that some people are in different time zones, so we want to make sure this is always accessible to everyone around the world. Awesome.
Cool. Thanks for watching, guys.
Hey, y'all.
Thank you all so much for the awesome work on the 6MO, and to the rest of the team involved that, of course, weren't on the webinar today. You are appreciated. Your contribution is very much appreciated. But yeah, I'll leave it to all of you to do your sign off, but thank you so much for doing this and bringing this to everyone.
Yes. And to that note, Shashank Chowdhury, Yiling Lin, Michelle Yuen, and Sharon Lin all contributed to this report, as well as the three of us here. So shouts out to them, and thanks y'all for your engagement. Sarah, any parting words for anyone here?
Nope, just thanks for letting me be a part of this webinar. It was so fun.
Definitely, and welcome to the team, Sarah. Rucker, anything?
I'll just say that Chartmetric is on TikTok now. So Sarah has been posting some awesome TikToks. So I highly recommend you tune in to that channel. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next month.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye.
Music is more omnipresent than ever. People consume music without borders and interact with artists across so many different channels. Everything is changing, and we are dealing with more data than ever in music history. Chartmetric is here to simplify the digital music landscape. We bring you the latest data from dozens of platforms and connect it, so you can focus on spotting trends and gathering insights. Track your audience across the entire digital spectrum from one simple-to-use dashboard and unlock powerful analytics to amplify your reach. Explore all this and more at chartmetric.com.